Hi everyone and welcome to a quick video, well maybe quick, it shouldn't be too long, but a video response to somebody who was asking about, I think it was a D500, a D750, a 5D Mark II or a D7200, something to do with those cameras. And the question that was asked was, what do you recommend for weddings? Now, I know if you go on YouTube, because obviously not only do I make YouTube videos, but I also watch people's videos and there's lots of useful information out there and there's also lots of bullshit out there as well. And my channel's not one of them. Well, I personally don't think it is. And a lot of people will say something along the lines as, like I have a D750 and I have a D500. I also have got on the way GH5 and I use a backup camera as a G80. But I don't say to people, I mean, one of the things that's said is, one of the common wedding photography setups could be a D750, which is a full frame, and also a D500, which is an APC size sensor as a backup. Now, that's not the way that that's not the advice that I would give anybody. I wouldn't say, look, if you're going to start getting into weddings, let's say for instance, get an Nikon D750, which is not the top of the range Nikon, but it's still a fantastic low light beast and it's great for weddings and it's full frame. And get the beast D500 as a backup, and if you need a little bit more focal range, you can use your full frame lenses on your APC size body and you can get a little bit more focal range and it'll be great as a backup body. Now that's all well and good, but as we all know, when you first start doing weddings, people ain't got like nearly £2 for a D750. And then they ain't got nearly £2 for a D500 either. So that I won't actually listen to that's bullshit, because I'll tell you now, a D500 for instance would wipe the floor with any camera out 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, which were the 5D Mark II. Then you had the 5D Mark I, which I found a fantastic wedding camera. Obviously you need some good low light primes to match with it, but I mean even a nifty 50 would go a long way on a 5D Mark I. Yes, you'd zoom into 100%, you'd see a little bit of noise at 1600, but I tell you now, it's still fantastic. And you know, if that's a budget that you're on, I'd be looking towards like the 5D Mark I as a main camera, if you're a bit skint, and maybe something like a Canon EOS 40D or a 50D as a backup. Well, you pick one up for 250 quid, and there's nothing wrong with them under ISO 800. You know, and to be honest, if you've got some good primes, you're on your way. Now, obviously, if your budget is a little bit more, if budget's not a problem, then yeah, go for it. Go get the Nikon D750 and the D750 or the D500, or get the D810 and the D500, or if you're really flush, get the Nikon D5 and get the D500 as a backup. But it's not needed. Any APC size sensor in the last 3 years at least, it'll give any full frame 5 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old a run for its money. So it's actually false information that you're actually getting. Don't feel that you have to get a full frame camera, because I'll tell you now, you'll be kind of disappointed. Apart from you do get a little bit more background blur and the images are a little bit nicer, but looking at the D500 vs the D750, which is obviously the latest and greatest APC size sensor from Nikon, there's no in it. Watch my video, I couldn't really. In fact, when I first looked at the video, I'm going to do a follow-up video to that, I said that the D750 was cleaner at high ISOs, which is, but delving into it, I looked at another guy's YouTube channel and he sent me an email and said, John, look at your images again and look at the colour detail and the dynamic range. And when I did, the D500 was slightly better. I just noticed that when I went to the D500 image, it had a little bit more noise, but it was sharper. And the colours, there was a lot more colour there, a lot more colour detail, which I sort of overlooked in my first test. But regardless of that, any camera will do a wedding. I mean, I've not, is it a Nikon D5 400? I bet that'll piss a wedding any day at week. Any camera out now, any DSLR will do a wedding, no problem. You don't have to have the best. Yes, a full frame is a nice camera because, for instance, I'm now videoing this on a Micro Four Thirds system, which I use for all my video now. I don't use DSLR anymore. Now it's a 2x crop factor. In fact, I think it's slightly more because I'm shooting it in 4K. So it's a 2.3, I think. So obviously I have to stand quite considerably far back to get an head and shoulder shot. Now if I was shooting full frame, I could go 130% nearer to the camera and still have the same framing, which would throw my background a lot more out of focus. But it's no big deal. It's not, you know, it is what it is. When you start doing something, you have to start somewhere. Somewhere is always a good point. You don't have to start at the top. And I mean, yes, I'd say now I've got some pretty top cameras that I go and do weddings with, but I've been doing them 6 years now. And I've only just built up in the last year and a half to full frame and the best APC size sensor as well. I didn't just go blow my money. I started off with a 40D. I started off with one 40D, and then I had two 40Ds. I did get stuck in a couple of pickles at ISO 1600 and above, where they were pretty darn noisy. But they did 90% of my weddings. Then I went to a 50D, which were a bit better. Then a 60D, which were a bit better. Then I went to a 70D. Then I went to a 5D Mark 1 and I loved that. So don't be put off at all. You choose what you want to choose. And 5D Mark 2, a 5D Mark 1 even, a D7200, a D500, a D750 will all do a fantastic job. Now, a quick question just before, well, not a question, an answer before I go. Yes, the D750 at higher ISO would have a cleaner looking image, there'd be less grain on it. But there's no reason with a decent prime. I mean, if you're skint and you ain't got a lot of money, get like a kit lens or something like that, or like I've got for my D750, I'm actually shooting the 20-120 f4 VR, so it's f4, but I know that my ISO is fantastic, so I don't really need 2.8, and I love that focal range, having 20mm, is it 20mm to 120 or 24 to 120? I love having that focal range. Now admittedly, that lens on a Canon, let's say a Canon 40D, it'd be a real struggle for it because it's f4 and you might not even be able to get your ISO high enough without dragging your shutter so slow in a low lit church that all your images would be blurred. And that's another thing. You won't be allowed to use flash in the ceremony, and now most people, especially in Leeds where I'm, and over here, you don't even ask, you just don't use flash during the ceremony. That's it, it's the norm now. No camera needs to use flash during the ceremony. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. You don't need blingage, you don't need the best, and yes, you can say, well, you've got the best now, John, or up to the top of the range. I have, yes, but I've been doing it 5-6 years and I've slowly progressed up the ladder to that. That's why I've got it. Now, like I said, if you've got plenty of coin and it's not an issue and you want something decent to go with and you want to shoot Nikon, either D5 and D500 as a backup, D5 and a D810. D810's okay, but the only thing that I didn't like about the D810, the body and everything's rugged and it's absolutely awesome, is that the D810 is massive 36 megapixel RAW files, I think there was, and they're absolutely useless for a wedding. I mean, I print A4 wedding album pages and most of them are 4-in-1. They have 4 images on that A4 paper. So to be honest, you could be shooting on a 40D at 1600 ISO and you won't see a great deal of grain anyway at that size. And I've said it before and I'll say it again just before I shoot, make sure that when you get your camera, I'd send off to your lab, wherever you get your prints from, or if you do it yourself, I send off to a lab. I use Pro-Am Imaging in Leeds. So if anybody's within a few 100 miles, you can send them through internet and get them posted to your house as long as you're in Leeds, England. And the peanuts, an A4 is something like 60 pence, and it's been done on a £45,000 printer. So it's not worth me doing them myself. You download a profile basically. When you've edited your images in Lightroom, whip them into Photoshop, convert them to Pro-Am's profile, crop them, sharpen them, whatever, and then you export them and you send them as a zip file to Pro-Am Imaging. I recommend you do that with no noise removal whatsoever. If you're going to shoot RAW, I'd just shoot RAW files with no noise removal at 800, 1600, 32, 64, 12,008 and 25,600. Send them off, let them come back, get some at A4, get some at 7x5, some at 8x6, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how great your camera looks at those stupid ISOs at that print size. Because most wedding albums are A4, I think some are A5 in rare cases, but mainly A4, A3, and every now and then I must admit the bride does ask for a full page, but even at 6400 it'd be fine, absolutely. That's my recommendations. I hope this video helps, and please comment and subscribe.